History, as it is written in textbooks, often prefers a clean narrative. It likes discoveries to happen in gleaming universities, made by men with long strings of letters after their names. But history is also a liar. It conveniently forgets that sometimes the most profound truths are found in the margins by people the establishment considers unqualified. We were told in 2020 that the world was facing a novel enemy, a sudden, mysterious ghost that had risen from nowhere to stop civilization in its tracks. But this is a deception. The truth is that this enemy had been stared down more than half a century earlier. It was seen, identified, and understood by a woman who hadn't even finished her formal schooling. Her name was June Almeida. And where the giants of science saw only empty space, she saw the crown that would one day rule the world. To understand the magnitude of what was lost, we must travel back to 1964, to the damp, gray landscape of post-war Britain. At the Common Cold Unit in Salisbury, a man named Dr. David Terrell was hitting a wall. He was a respected virologist, a man of method and logic, but he was being haunted by a sample labeled B814. It had come from the nasal washings of a sick schoolboy in Surrey. Terrell knew something was there. The sample made volunteers sick. It behaved like a virus. It moved like a virus, but it was invisible. Every standard test to cultivate it had failed. It refused to grow in the usual cell cultures. Under the standard microscopes of the day, it was a ghost. It was as if the sickness was being caused by nothing at all. Desperation is often the mother of unconventional choices. Terrell had heard whispers of a technician at St. Thomas's Hospital in London. She was an outsider in the rigid hierarchy of 1960s British science. June Almeida was the daughter of a Scottish bus driver. She had left school at 16 because her family couldn't afford to send her to university. She had no PhD, no prestigious pedigree. What she had was a pair of hands that could manipulate the microscopic world with the grace of a virtuoso, and eyes that could see patterns in the chaos. She had pioneered a technique that most experts dismissed as impossible: negative staining. By using antibodies to clump viruses together, she could theoretically make the invisible visible, using the electron microscope not just as a tool, but as a window into a hidden reality. Terrell sent the ghost sample to London. He expected little. The scientific consensus was that you couldn't just look for a virus you couldn't grow. It was a fool's errand. But June Almeida didn't care about consensus. She sat before her electron microscope, a hulking machine of metal and lenses, and peered into the abyss of the subvisible world. She adjusted the focus, manipulating the beam of electrons, searching through the grainy gray fog of the sample. And then she saw it. They weren't just blobs or blurs. They were round gray dots, distinct and undeniable. But it was what surrounded them that made her breath catch. Encircling each particle was a delicate, radiant halo, a fringe of petal-shaped projections. It looked like the solar corona during an eclipse. She wasn't looking at a blurry mistake. She was looking at a new family of viruses. She was the first human being to lay eyes on the coronavirus.
The discovery should have been a thunderclap. It should have been the moment the champagne corks popped and the press releases were typed up. June Almeida had done the impossible. She had visualized a pathogen that had evaded the best minds in virology. She had proven that the B814 sample was not a ghost, but a distinct biological entity with a structure unlike anything seen in humans before. She was certain of what she was seeing. This wasn't a fluke. Years earlier, while researching in Canada, she had seen similar structures in hepatitis, specifically affecting mice, and in bronchitis affecting chickens. The establishment had dismissed those observations too, but now she had the proof in a human sample. The pieces of the puzzle were locking together. This was a new genus of virus, a missing link in the chain of disease. With the excitement that only comes from true discovery, Almeida and Tyrrell prepared their findings. They wrote up a paper for a prestigious general medical journal outlining the existence of this new viral structure. They attached the images, the evidence that was, to Almeida's eyes, irrefutable. They submitted the work, expecting the scientific community to welcome this breakthrough. Instead, they walked straight into a wall of arrogance. The response from the peer reviewers was not just a rejection, it was an insult. It was a dismissal so patronizing, it could only have come from a place of deep-seated insecurity. The referees rejected the paper summarily. They didn't argue with the methodology or the data points. They attacked the visual evidence itself. They claimed that the images June Almeida had produced were nothing more than bad pictures of the influenza virus. Let that sink in. They looked at a completely new organism, a structure that would one day hold the fate of the world in its spikes, and they called it a blurry photo of the flu. It was a classic case of academic gatekeeping. The experts had decided that if they hadn't seen it, it couldn't exist. They couldn't accept that a woman without a degree, a mere technician, had outpaced their knowledge. The rejection letter was a burning indictment of the scientific culture of the time. It wasn't just skepticism, it was blindness. They accused her of seeing artifacts, of misinterpreting the clumping of the sample. They gaslit her professional capability, reducing her revolutionary imaging technique to incompetence. Imagine the frustration of holding the truth in your hands, of seeing the enemy face to face, only to be told by the blind men in power that you were hallucinating. June Almeida was standing on the precipice of history, pointing out the storm on the horizon, and the captains of the ship told her to clean her glasses. This bad photography was the only evidence humanity had of the threat that was waiting in the wings, and the establishment threw it in the trash because it didn't fit their narrow, comfortable view of the world.
A lesser spirit might have been crushed. The weight of institutional rejection is heavy. It is designed to make you doubt your own eyes, to make you retreat back into the shadows where technicians belong. But June Almeida was made of sterner stuff. She knew what she had seen. She knew the halo was real. She didn't burn her notes. She didn't apologize for her bad pictures. She simply went back to work. She persisted with a quiet, steely determination that is the hallmark of true genius. She ignored the sneers of the gatekeepers and continued to refine her imaging, continued to trust her own expertise over the dogma of the reviewers. Her vindication was slow, a quiet tide rather than a sudden wave, but it was absolute. In 1967, her work was finally acknowledged, and in 1968, her findings were published in the British Medical Journal. By then, the evidence was overwhelming. The bad pictures were accepted as the gold standard of viral imaging, and it was June, along with Tyrrell and their colleagues, who gave the virus its name. They looked at that distinctive, beautiful halo that had caused so much trouble, that solar flare surrounding the dark center, and they called it coronavirus, the crown. A name that would sleep in medical textbooks for decades, known only to specialists, until it woke up to claim the world. 50 years later, when a strange pneumonia began to spread in Wuhan, scientists didn't have to start from scratch. They didn't have to fumble in the dark as Tyrrell had done in 1964. They had a map. They had a reference. They used the very techniques June Almeida had pioneered to identify the new pathogen. When they looked through their modern high-powered microscopes at SARS-CoV-2, they saw the same thing June had seen in that damp London lab, the crown. The bad photography of 1964 became the mugshot of the 2020 pandemic. June Almeida passed away in 2007, years before the virus she discovered would stop the globe spinning. She died without the knighthoods or the global fame that lesser men received for lesser work. But history has a way of correcting its own errors, eventually. We are rewriting the ledger today.
We are putting the name June Almeida back where it belongs, at the very beginning of the story. She was not just a technician, she was a visionary who saw the invisible. She stared into the microscope and saw the future, and when the world told her she was wrong, she stood her ground. The experts called it bad photography. History calls it prophecy. This is the legacy of the woman who found the first coronavirus, a reminder that the truth is often found in the hands of those the world refuses to see.